The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Hello and happy Sunday, and we have made it to the final week of the regular season. It's definitely crazy to think that we're already here, but it's definitely an exciting time. Rivalry week is here. It's one of my favorite weeks of the college football season. We also have a lot to get recap. We have a big upset that happened on the Plains that we'll definitely get into. The coaching talks is going to continue as the weeks go on too. Arkansas is going to be not firing Sam Pittman. We'll be talking about that, and then we'll also be talking about some of the games that are happening in rivalry. Maybe we'll get a couple of more bowl-eligible teams in the SEC to get more teams in there. So it's going to be a busy week here in week number 13. So, Wade, with that, how was your weekend?
Pretty good. I watched some really good football, both in the SEC and out of the conference last night. I really enjoyed watching the South Carolina game. We'll recap that. The Palmetto Bowl has a lot on the line.
Yeah.
And then out of the conference, I don't know if you watched it, but the Oregon State and Washington game was a thriller in the rain. And Washington remains undefeated, so they still have a lot to play for, potentially against Alabama or Georgia.
Yeah, I tell you what, Washington reminds me so much of last year's TCU. Like, I feel like every week we're just waiting for them to lose, and they just keep on winning. So they got the Apple Cup. Yeah, they got the Apple Cup this week. Washington State just absolutely destroyed Colorado on Friday night. So we'll see Washington State. They sit at 5-6. They have a lot to play for and try and spoil Washington's season. But outside of that, I mean, yeah, the Pac-12 race with Oregon, the way that they're looking, they have Oregon State in the battle of the Civil War. So the Pac-12, pretty much, I would love to see the rematch, Washington and Oregon. I love to see Arizona get in there. Somehow there's still a chance that they can get in there too. But yeah, we'll get to all that. I'm sure we'll get to that on Sports Scramble. Definitely going to be a wild couple of weeks leading up to the college football playoff selection show. So let's get ahead and get to the AP Top 25 poll. And it's the same teams. Pretty surprising to still see Tennessee, even though that they have 4 losses. I know that they were in the college football playoff last week. They were number 18, but I would have to assume that they would fall out. Just saying that there's just too many teams behind them with 3 losses and 2 losses that are probably going to get over them. But number 1 team in the country, we'll probably see this on Tuesday night. We saw it, the leap of Georgia on Tuesday night, bump up against Ohio State. But pretty emphatic win for the Dogs on Saturday against Tennessee. They remain number 1. Alabama remains the number 8 team. They have the Iron Bowl this week. Got a good win, I guess, against Chattanooga. Chattanooga's on their way to the FCS playoffs. That was announced today. Number 10 is Missouri. Florida gave them a scare, but Mevis the kicker once again. You always got to bet on him to make you a timely field goal. So Harrison Mevis with the kick gets Missouri to that 9th win on the season. Ole Miss started off slow against ULM, but ended up winning that game pretty convincingly. They stay at number 12. LSU moves up a spot after a very impressive performance for Jaden Daniels and the LSU offense, cruising to a victory over Georgia State. And then Tennessee, they scored the first touchdown, and then after that, it was all Dogs. Remains the number 25 team. So that pretty much rounds out the top 6. There's probably not going to be much of differences for the college football playoff poll. All the top 10 teams won, so there's probably not going to be much of a parity in that. So there's really not a lot hold to get into that. So we will move on with the show. As we always do, just a reminder, we want to get our fans involved. It's rivalry week. If you have a team that you hate, just want to put something like screw you, Clemson, or something like that, put it in the comments. So we'll definitely talk about that. So if you have any comments about the rivalry week or the games that happen in week number 12, let us know down in the comments, and we will get to that. All right, let's get into our last rendition of SEC Fantasy before we get into our double down. I don't know. We probably won't even do one for the SEC Championship. I don't think it's kind of a waste.
Yeah, we usually skip it.
Yeah, it would be pretty testy for one of us picking Alabama's defense and one of us picking Georgia's defense. So we'll just skip it. We'll go on to the bowl season. But our SEC Fantasy is presented by our friends over at Miller Bros Golf. If you're looking to upgrade your gear on and off the golf course, you can head on over to MillerBros.com. Use code BELLYUP at checkout, 15% off. I'm sure there's going to be some Black Friday deals for our Fanatic sponsor. I'm sure there'll be one too. So I'll keep that in mind as you check out and start your holiday shopping. All right, let's get into the SEC fantasy rules before we get into our Week 12 teams and how they did. A quarterback, a running back, a receiver, and a defense. And once again, you cannot use a player you picked from last week. That rule is going to be wiped away in the bowl season. It's going to be reset. And then the bowl season will have 2 of each. So it will definitely be interesting. And also, you have to pick one from the New Year's Six and then also one from the regular bowl. So that's definitely going to be exciting. But before that, we have 2 more weeks of SEC fantasy. So let's get into how Wade's team did. And as you can see, the defense looked like a good pick on Friday, but not a good pick on Saturday. Auburn's defense let you down. So talk about how your 2 Missouri boys exited and how Auburn let you down this week.
Yeah, so as you see, Brady Cook and Cody Schrader had a really good afternoon for me. Brady Cook, I looked at one point, I think at the end of the third quarter, he had 192 passing yards. So this guy just went absolutely off on the fourth quarter, and including the game-winning touchdown drive. I mean, he was just eating Florida for a lunch because it looked like they were going to force Missouri to kick a long field goal to win the game, and that Brady Cook was just going to throw the ball away. And this man steps up into the pocket, fires 30 yards downfield, gets it to be a chip shot field goal for Missouri. So he was just really slinging it. He's been one of the best in the SEC. Cody Schrader, he also has been one of the best in the SEC. He had 148 total yards. Not much on the receiving end this week, but plenty on the ground against that Florida defense. And Xavier Legette, he had a great game, 83 total yards. He had 94 receiving yards, but negative 11 rushing yards. South Carolina was down a running back. They were down to just 2 scholarship running backs, so they did experiment with a few designed carries for him. He had one that kind of blew up and ended up losing some yardage. But 83 yards total, 2 touchdowns. He was definitely the player of the game, in my opinion, for that one. And then the Auburn defense. This was a little bit of a head scratcher. I knew that they weren't playing the worst team in the league this week. I mean, there was some FCS matchups and whatnot, but Auburn had a lot of momentum. They had played really well defensively against Mississippi State and against Arkansas. So for them to come out and lose, but, just lose really bad as well on top of it, and letting up 414 yards to a Mountain West team, that just really puzzled me. But in the end, I was still able to end up in the positives at 159 yards.
Yeah, even with that, it was pretty dang close in SEC fantasy. You had 159, as we'll go on now to my team. As a note, there was a substitution. We'll get into that. I went with a duo here of Georgia, Carson Beck. Once again, a phenomenal game, another 300-yard passing game. Mari Anderson, like you mentioned, they had to toy around with the running backs. Mari Anderson, he had 20 yards on the ground and also 20 receiving yards, so 49 yards. And this is where Ladd McConkey actually, he played in this game, but he got hurt in this game. So my backup was to just go with Brock Bowers. I wasn't just going to cop out and just go with the guy who had the most receiving yards. So Brock Bowers, 60 yards. And then Alabama defense, 233 yards. Pretty expected going up against Chattanooga. So I get the slim margin. This was on a very good week for both of us. Both our quarterbacks did well. Your running back did phenomenal. Your wide receiver, but outside of that, I mean, the defense obviously did good, but the running back and wide receiver for me was an absolute dud this season to both of us to get below 200. So hopefully we can get back on track heading into rivalry week. So with that, I did have the first pick, and I went ahead and went with one of the best playmakers in the country. I went with Jane Daniels, Carson Beck. You a break from SEC fantasy. I feel like he's just on a streak from being on this. So you're going with Carson Beck against the Yellow Jack defense.
Yeah, this was about matchups to me. I think that Carson Beck should be able to sling it against Georgia Tech. I considered a couple of different quarterbacks, including Jalen Milroe, but I just felt like the ceiling was a little bit higher with Carson Beck, as well as the floor, because, I mean, this guy just throws for at least 250 every week.
Yeah, this is more of just pick Jane Daniels until you can have him because we'll only have one more time to pick him. I'm sure that one of us is going to be picking him bowl season, but going up against Texas A&M, a little bit of revenge factor from LSU. The Tigers got embarrassed last year, and Jane Daniels trying to keep it in the Heisman race. Bo Nix, he went out and threw six touchdowns in the first half. What does Daniels do? He throws 8 touchdowns. So those looking like the 2-horse race between Bo Nix, a former SEC quarterback at Auburn. So I think that Jane Daniels, the way that this LSU offense has been doing, this might be a shootout. The way that Texas A&M's offense has also been rolling, even with their third-string quarterback. So I think that you just got to go with the offense, and Jane Daniels, he can do it all. So Carson Beck, Jane Daniels, those are probably the 2 top SEC quarterbacks. So I'm sure there's going to be 300-plus numbers for both of them heading into this week. All right, let's move on now to the ball carriers to see we have some veterans here. You went with Jalen Wright. I feel like you've been picking Jalen Wright all season. He's definitely been one of the most consistent. It would be an absolute sin for one of us to not take somebody in the Thursday night Turkey Bowl, Egg Bowl for Ole Miss and Mississippi State. So Jalen Wright's matchup, once again, you love going up against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup's just great against Vanderbilt. We saw Mario Anderson. We saw Ray Davis. We've seen pretty much everybody shred this defense on the ground. So including that guy right there, Quinshon Judkins, a couple weeks ago. So I definitely feel like it's a safe pick for Jalen Wright. But matchup aside, this guy's just been really, really good all year. And I think Tennessee's at the point where, they know what they have in Joe Milton. He's going to finish it off strong. He has had a good career, but this team is very much a run-oriented team, in my opinion. So I look for Wright to have close to 20 carries in this one, maybe even 150 yards.
Hey, we'll see if he can break out that 80-yard run that he did against UConn to really set himself up. I'm going to go with Quinshon Judkins. He's coming off of a 60-yard performance against ULM. Didn't really have to use the run game. They'll probably have to use the run game more against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a team that I can't really figure out. I know they're coming off of a great performance against Southern Miss, but 2 weeks ago they just let up 51 points. So this defense is very, very vulnerable, so I feel comfortable going with Judkins. We do have a question rolling in. Wonder who will win the Heisman? Daniels possibly. So Wade, if the Heisman ended today, who would be your pick to take on the
I'm still going Jaden Daniels. I just think he's got the most outstanding stats. I wanted to bring it up when we were on the quarterback slide. I mean, if you're going to give it to Bo Nix, why not give it to Carson Beck? He's doing the same thing, but on a better team, and one that we know is going to be in the playoff. We don't even know if Oregon's going to make the playoff by the time that the Heisman's decided.
Yeah, I think that if the Heisman is truly supposed to be the best player in the country award, it's definitely got to be Jane Daniels. But the Heisman has come a team award, and it doesn't matter if you have to be like 13-0 or 12-0. We've seen players, Johnny Manziel has won it with 3 losses. Tim Tebow in 2007. We also saw RG3 win it with 3 losses. So we'll see. I think he has to have one more performance against Texas A&M because if you really look at it, if Oregon goes to the Pac-12 championship, that's one more game that he gets under his belt, and Jane Daniels is going to be sitting on his couch while Bo Nix is going to be playing. So it's going to have one more good performance against Texas A&M to really solidify that. But if you look at the sports books today, Jane Daniels is now minus odds, so he's now the favorite in the betting world at least. So that's definitely been a story to watch in the past 24 hours. Moving on now to the wide receiver position. You're going to go with a guy that's also going to be on the war. This man does not win the Biletnikoff. I will absolutely riot. Marvin Harrison Jr., No, not even close to what Malik Neighbors has done this season. And a new face. We saw Jermaine Burton get selected at SEC Fantasy when he was at Georgia. Now he gets a spot with Alabama. So tell me about Malik Neighbors going up against Texas A&M secondary.
Yeah, Malik Neighbors, he's definitely been a mainstay here on the show. Jaden Daniels' favorite target, and I think he has no problem against Texas A&M. But LSU just designs routes around him. He's as good of a bet as anybody to get over 100 yards. So just giving respect where it's due. I mean, it's the rivalry week. It's the big grand finale here for SEC fantasy. We got to have Neighbors on there.
Yeah, got to. But I'm going to go with Jermaine Burton. I just saw what New Mexico State's offense was able to do against Auburn. And
Yeah,
we haven't really talked about these Alabama wide receivers. Burton's coming off of a good performance against Chattanooga. I think, Jalen Milroe is going to be able to slice and dice up this secondary. So I think that Jermaine Burton has a really good game. Maybe gets a couple of touchdowns. He had that big game against Texas A&M. He's been pretty up and down. So I think that this is going to be one of his breakout performances. I need a wide receiver to really step up because Malik Neighbors could probably go for 200 this weekend against Texas A&M. The way that the offense has been rolling. Moving on,
you get for your quarterback.
Yeah,
it's like
let's go on to the defenses. You're going to go against the defense that you picked last week in Auburn. Go with Alabama's defense against that Auburn offense that looked absolutely pathetic on Saturday.
Yep, I learned my lesson. I'm going to trust the stronger team in the Yellowhammer State with Alabama. I mean, this defense has been really good all year. They did really well for you last week against Chattanooga. Definitely a little bit more of a challenge this week, but I don't think that Auburn's going to give them much of a fight. I really like how Alabama looks as a team overall. I think this is definitely a top 5 team in the country, and these two teams right here on your screen, we'll be talking about them next week, and that's just going to be a great matchup.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that one in the ATL. Georgia defense going up against Georgia Tech. They do have a familiar face. Haynes King is the quarterback of former Texas A&M. He transferred over that. Georgia Tech, they're 6-5. They've been a team that's really pesky. They have 2 quality wins against Miami and North Carolina, but they haven't seen a defense like this. Georgia, the way they are on absolute murderers row. Like they are just absolutely blowing people out. They're like the Georgia that we have seen the past 2 years. I think that continues, especially with Alabama looming. So I think that Georgia defense really steps up in this clean old-fashioned hate rivalry against Georgia Tech. So that's going to be it for the SEC Fantasy. We'll have the recap next week, and then after that, it will be the bowl season. But before we get into all of that, let's get into SEC Week 12 recap presented by SeatGeek. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of sporting events going on. SeatGeek, if you're a first-time user using their app or on the website, you can use code BellyUpSports for 20% off of your first purchase. Okay, let's get into the Week 12 recap. Cupcake schedule. Probably not going to get into really that big of a recap, especially in this game, because why do we even need to talk about this? We knew that this was going to happen. Number 8, Alabama cruises to a 66-10 victory. The only thing that I saw negative was Ty Simpson. Whenever he tried to score a touchdown, he dropped the ball before going into the end zone. Why do people do that in college football? Just take the touchdown. Celebrate whenever you get into the end zone. I see it way too many times. I don't know what it keeps happening. What are your thoughts on that, Wade?
Yeah, just an undisciplined play, and Nick Saban wouldn't even look at the kid after that happened. He just shut him out entirely. I think that they actually did not lose possession on that play. I think the ball laid in the field of play, and nobody touched it. So the officials, when they reviewed it, gave Alabama the ball at the 1-yard line, and I don't even think that Ty Simpson checked back in. I think that they benched him right then and there. Just really a shame. I mean, he had a 60-yard rush. It was a great play. Just got to be smarter than that. But that's the kind of discipline Saban plays with. He doesn't care that they're up 66-10. He's going to make it a coachable moment. And Ty Simpson, he could be the future of this team. So he's got to hold him accountable.
Yeah, especially with Nick Saban, he's going to get after you to do something like that. You're going to ride the pine for the rest of the season. But Alabama, pretty expected, 66-10. They get the win as they host. They go on the road now to Auburn. Another one was just another cupcake one. Thank gosh that this week was over. Not really too many good games this week. There were some good games in the conference, but really outside of that, there wasn't really much to look after. The Oregon and Washington game was pretty good, but really outside of that, it was a dud of a schedule. But number 13, Ole Miss, ULM, Ole Miss ended up winning this game 35-3. It wasn't pretty in this one. I don't know if it was a hangover from getting beat by Georgia last week or what it was. But Jackson Dart in this offense was able to get going in the second half. We saw Trey Harris. He's definitely been one of the young great wide receivers for this Ole Miss offense. So Ole Miss gets a bounce back victory. They'll have a short week as they have Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl against Thanksgiving. So we're just going to continue on. Like I mentioned, we'll get into this. Obviously we'll get into the Auburn New Mexico State game, but Southern Miss at Mississippi State. Mississippi State gets their first win under the interim head coach as their search continues on in this in-state rivalry matchup as Mississippi State won this one 41-20. A couple of big plays by the offense. Will Rogers, he was back in there. It was a slow start for them and definitely not the start that Mississippi State fans wanted to see in the first half, but they got the running game going. Pittman, he had a good game. We haven't seen DeQuavius Marks pretty much the entirety of the season. Then Mississippi State was really able to seal the deal with a pick six by Jet Johnson, and then he lateraled it to his teammate, and his teammate took it to the house as Mississippi State gets a victory. They get their fifth win, a win on Thursday. They're going bowling, so a lot still to play for on the line for Mississippi State. So the Dogs get a key victory there, so we will move on now to the next matchup. Abilene Christian,
both interim coaches got their win.
Texas A&M. Yes, both interim coaches here, but Texas A&M gets the victory here. Abilene Christian did get on the board. They hang in there pretty strong there, but in the end, Texas A&M, their athletes, just too much in that one as A&M continues to roll. They put up 51 points last week against Mississippi State. They put up 38. We'll see if that can continue against the LSU defense that's been up and down. They've been a roller coaster ride. So Texas
I'm sure they will. They'll get their 20 just for showing up.
It might be first to 40 in Tiger Stadium on Saturday morning. Moving on to the next one. We'll just breeze through all these cupcake games. Well, I thought that we were going to breeze through this. So we might have had to breeze through all this. I mean, number 1, Georgia, number 18, Tennessee. This wasn't much really of a game. It was expected, though. I mean, Georgia has just been running over people, it feels like, in the second half of the season. Like I mentioned, Tennessee scored first to go up 7-0. And then after that, you saw the emergence of Brock Bowers. He got a touchdown. Pretty much everybody was involved. I mean, the two running backs, Milton, Edwards, the offense was clicking. This was just a Georgia dominating victory. Gets you out of here. Dolly Parton, she made an appearance. Peyton Manning, she made an appearance, but that was not enough for Neyland Stadium as Georgia. Is anybody going to beat this team?
I don't think so. I think the only team that there's two teams that come to mind for me. The first one's not even in the playoff. I think Alabama could absolutely beat Georgia in the conference championship. And then outside the conference, the team that I'm keeping an eye on is Oregon. I just think that they've been playing really hot. Dan Lanning's obviously very familiar with the Georgia football team, but Georgia did absolutely boat race Oregon to start last season. I know that the players are different, the schemes are different. Bo Nix is playing on a different level. But to me, those are the two teams that I could see getting in their way because of the experience factor. Other than that, I mean, Michigan does have the experience factor, but we've seen Georgia and Michigan play really before, and I just don't think they can. I don't think they have the toys to keep up with Georgia offensively.
Yeah, you need a high-powered offense and some pulse of a defense. I would say Washington, but Washington's defense, I don't know if you could say like they played one of their best games in a couple of weeks. I don't know if that was the rain. I don't know that Oregon State just couldn't really run the football that night, and they pretty much was a one-dimensional team. You see teams like Ohio State, Michigan. Ohio State and Michigan are really built. Their offense is good enough to beat you. They do have an elite defense. They could hold up with that, but I don't know. There's you got to play your A game to even keep it close with Georgia because there really hasn't been many teams. Auburn of all teams kept it close with Georgia, and teams like Tennessee are just getting run over. So definitely not the season that Tennessee fans had in season. They're 7-4 now, heading into rivalry week. They do face off against Vanderbilt. So with the win, they get their 8th win, and then the bowl season they can still pick up their 9th win. So still have 2 more opportunities to get that 9th win and finish off the season pretty good. So we will now move on. That was one of the last times that you'll have the 2:30 game on CBS. That time is starting to wind down as the SEC will now be shifting to ESPN next. And oh boy, yep, we got to talk about this one. New Mexico State 31, Auburn 10. If you would have told me that this was going to be the score and it wouldn't be Auburn, I would have told you that you were absolutely crazy. But my gosh, last week we were talking about, okay, Auburn, they was on a couple of multi-game winning streak. And oh boy, they just absolutely laid an egg on Saturday night against New Mexico State. I mean, New Mexico State outcoached them and outplay them. It looked like Auburn didn't even want to be there. I don't know if they were looking ahead to Alabama or what, or they just didn't even want to be there. But this was a team that showed no fight. I mean, Peyton Thorne, it feels like the offensive line did not protect him at all. Peyton Thorne really had no time to really find his wide open receivers. Guess how many times Jarquez Hunter ran the ball on Saturday? Just give me a guess.
I'll go 7.
8 times.
8.
That's where you screwed up. And are only giving Jarquez Hunter 8 carries is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, he should have had like 30 by the time that they realized that Peyton Thorne sucks.
Yeah. I mean, Hugh Freeze, the way that his high-powered offense is offensive guru, this offense is one of the worst I've ever seen. Mexico State, you got to give. I did not know that they were 9-3 at this point. I thought that after UMass, they were not a good football team, but Jerry Kill and the boys have absolutely turned. I mean, that quarterback, he just absolutely schooled Auburn's defense.
Yeah, game of his life.
Yeah. So New Mexico, they are looking pretty good in the Conference USA. I'm pretty sure that they're on their way to the Conference USA championship game, probably against Liberty, since Liberty is the only team, and then Jacksonville State is ineligible because that stupid rule that the NCAA has in place of the 2-year transition rule. So very surprising performance for Auburn against Mexico State.
Yeah, New Mexico, the state of New Mexico showed out with 2 upsets on Saturday on national television. New Mexico State knocked off Auburn here, and then University of New Mexico pulled off the upset against Fresno State, I'm pretty sure. So really good showing for that state. And I think it just shows that, yeah, these games can be meaningless, but kind of on one side. I mean, this is the big game for the little guy in New Mexico State. They've been circling this game for years. And kudos to them. They came out to play and played really tough. And we saw a little bit of that as well in the Florida State game and the LSU game. So these guys are all Division I athletes, and they're going to give it their best crack.
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico State got 2 wins. Not only did they get the win in the win column, they also took home $1.85 million in their
Always nice, yes.
So, yeah, they beat them down, and they took their money. So that was a win and win for New Mexico.
And they probably got a bunch of free food at the tailgate. Just a good week.
This was a very good win for a program that was absolutely in the dumps. I remember them playing on NCAA 14. They were like a 63 overall. They were one of the worst teams. But now all of a sudden, Jerry Kill has this program absolutely rolling. So you'll see New Mexico State face off against probably Liberty in the Conference USA Championship and get an opportunity to get that 10th win on the season. Would definitely be a huge program booster. But this win alone definitely helps the recruiting trail for them. Moving on in the SEC slate in week number 12, are we back to the cupcakes? And we're not. We're actually to probably one of the best on the slate
game
here
of the weekend
in the SEC. Florida at number 9, Missouri. Missouri, like I mentioned, of the boot of Harrison Mevis. Mevis, once again, he did it in week 2 against Kansas State. He did it against the Florida Gators. And this was a back-and-forth battle. I mean, Missouri, every time that they tried to pull away, I mean, Graham Mertz in this offense kept pulling away. Graham Mertz, is going to be out for the season now with a collarbone injury. So we'll see if Graham Mertz decides to move on to the NFL or come back to Florida. I would have to say that he'll probably come back another year in Gainesville. I think that Florida is definitely going to be a team to watch next year. We'll see if they stay with Billy Napier or not. But yeah, this was, Missouri. This was a team that relied heavily on Cody Schrader. And my gosh, Theo Wise had that one touchdown that was absolutely insane. And then, I mean, this is just a Missouri team that have athletes all around. Their defense was tested by a Florida team. They really had their number, but Florida went up 31 to 28, actually 31 to 30, excuse me, with a minute and 30, and that's just too much time to leave on the clock for Brady Cook. As Missouri gets their 9th win on the season, has an opportunity next week to face off against Arkansas, get a win there. So do you see this Missouri team getting to a New Year's Six bowl game?
I think the door is there. I would think that their biggest competition right now would be Ole Miss. I think that we'll see one SEC team in the playoff. I think we'll see the loser of the SEC championship game get another New Year's Six bowl bid. And then I think there's an outside chance that Ole Miss or Missouri could snag an additional New Year's Six bid as well. So I could see the SEC maxing out their 3 spots allowed with 4 top 10 teams now. I think that there's a really good chance. I think that Ole Miss will probably get
on Alabama too.
Yeah, very good point. Ole Miss is probably the more prominent fan base, so I would see them potentially getting the nod. But either way, Missouri will be going to a great bowl game. This is just really good momentum for the team and good for them. I haven't heard Eli Drinkwitz name much in the Texas A&M cycle, so maybe my hunch was wrong, and they can continue to build on the momentum.
I hope Eli Drinkwitz. The only really name I heard was Dan Campbell, but Campbell shot that down. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that.
The only thing that I want to do is not coach for them. He is an alum for Texas A&M, but there's no way that he's going to lead the Detroit Lions. They came away with a win against Justin Fields and the Bears today to move on to 8-2. We'll see them on Thanksgiving in that tradition game. But Missouri gets a key victory. Florida now has to win the Sunshine Showdown against Florida State if they want to go bowling. So it's pretty much a win. And you go bowling or you lose, and you're going to be sitting on the couch watching all the SEC teams in action during the bowl season. So really good win for Missouri, as this has definitely been one of the season to remember if you are a Missouri Tiger fan. Moving on now to the next game here in the Week 12 recap. FIU at Arkansas. This was a close game after one. Arkansas led 14-13, but outside of that, Arkansas was able to get a bounce-back victory. Jefferson, he became the leading quarterback for Arkansas, and it was reported today. Arkansas's athletic director said that Sam Pittman will be returning as head coach for Arkansas. So I don't know if Arkansas fans are too happy at that. So is that a good move or a bad move to bring back Pittman next year?
I think Texas A&M kind of forced their hand, even Mississippi State, potentially Florida. There's a lot of openings in the SEC this year, and I would think that Arkansas would be kind of a middle-of-the-road option. So, and we really haven't seen a ton of group of 5 teams just go out there and kill it. So I think that they kind of know where they are in the pecking order. Let's face it, Arkansas did have some injuries. Rocket Sanders was never up to 100%, and maybe they just want to have some experience guiding them into the next era of the SEC, but they can't get too complacent because they're just going to get absolutely passed up by teams like Texas and Oklahoma if they don't have the right guy at that helm. So I get it for one more year, but I think, honestly, I just think they're delaying the inevitable, and they should probably get a new guy in there.
Yeah, I agree. You can't wait for too longer. I mean, there's a team to your west that's looking for a new head coach, and there's a team to your east that's also looking for a new head coach. And then you'll have 2 more teams that with Texas and Oklahoma, the way that they're built. So, yeah, Arkansas can't get left behind, or it's going to be too late. If got to get your guy when you got to get your guy. But obviously, the athletic director thinks that they already have it, even though that Arkansas hasn't had the season that they definitely hoped for. They had that absolute gauntlet, and they went 0-6 during their gauntlet. After that, they're out of bowl eligibility. So they do have one more game. We'll see if they can spoil Missouri's party. That game will be in Fayetteville. So we'll see if the Hogs have one more to say before this 2023 season ends for them and their calendar. And that will shift to the 2024 season, looking ahead to the next season in the new SEC, which will definitely be exciting to talk about next season. So now moving on to the SEC Week 12 recap. We had one of the few. We got to thank the SEC East for saving us this week of the conference play. We had Kentucky at South Carolina, and it was a defensive battle. Who would have thought that? 17-14. What an absolutely insane environment in Williams-Brice. They had a live performance of Daru, the creator of Sandstorm, being there. I mean, if you haven't been to a South Carolina game, their pregame, they get absolutely lit in that stadium. I mean, the LEDs, the Sandstorm, Cocky coming out of the curtain and getting the fans excited. I mean, my gosh, that crowd definitely gets excited. So that crowd definitely helped Shane Beamer and the boys. But that South Carolina defense, and so that I talk trash about them, they have been playing some really good football down the stretch. Love to see it. I don't know if it's more of South Carolina's defense being good or Kentucky's defense, and especially Devin Leary. He hasn't been the quarterback that I would have thought that he would have been this season. Ray Davis wasn't really much of a factor in this one as South Carolina absolutely shut him down. Like you mentioned, Xavier Leggett was the player of the game for South Carolina. He's definitely been the most underrated wide receivers in the SEC this season. And Spencer Rattler, he had himself a good game too. So South Carolina gets their 5th win of the season. One more, they'll go bowling. So how are you feeling about South Carolina heading in the rivalry week?
Feels a lot like last year, I think this team probably was a lot better than their record indicates. They had some rough ones. Definitely should have won that Florida game. Probably should have given A&M a ball game, but here they are fighting for a chance at a bowl game against Clemson. They did it last year, pulled it off, and got to that bowl game. So I think they can do it again. Like you said, that defense looks really, really good. I think that they just needed to get healthy. Jordan Strahan and what was his name? Number 91. He just Taka Hemingway. I mean, he was just everywhere, and he had the game-winning pass breakup. So, yeah, I think the South Carolina team is hot at the right time. It's going to be a ruckus atmosphere at night again next week against Clemson. I'm really excited that that's a night game again. It's been a minute since those two teams have played under the lights just because of how South Carolina's performed over the last couple seasons. So I know there's some LSU fans out there that are complaining about playing at 11 a.m., but secretly, I'm kind of looking forward to watching South Carolina and Clemson play next Saturday night.
Yeah, me too. I would rather see that rivalry matchup under the lights. Dabo, Sweeney, and Clemson coming off of a good performance against North Carolina. So that's a team that's also been playing well down the stretch. So definitely going to be a fun environment. It's probably going to be sold out. I would have to imagine. I mean,
I think it probably already is
coming into your stadium. So definitely going to be a fun environment to be in Columbia, South Carolina on Saturday night. So the Gamecocks get a good win, but Kentucky, it feels like we talk about them every season. They start off strong, and then before you know it, they already have like 5 losses on the season.
Like clockwork.
We'll see if Kentucky can pull off the upset against Louisville, but Louisville's a team, man. They are playing really good football too, so it'll definitely be tough. We do have one more game to get to in week number 12. This was a 7:00 game, the last Saturday night game in Tiger Stadium. Like Wade mentioned, LSU will be playing in the morning on Saturday. I'm sure a lot of LSU fans, particularly one LSU fan that we know pretty well, is not too happy about that game. But number 15 LSU came away with the victory, 56-14. Now Georgia State in the first quarter was going punch for punch. LSU scored, Georgia State scored, LSU scored, and like LSU fans like, here we go again. The same old defense can't stop them. But outside that first quarter, Georgia State offense didn't really do much, and Jane Daniels tied Joe Burrow's record. I did not think that record would be broken this early on, but Jane Daniels said, "Hold my beer." He wanted to go for 9, but Brian Kelly's like, "Not so fast." We're putting in Garrett Nussmeier. this is a 56-14 game in the fourth quarter. We don't want to get you hurt in pretty much a meaningless game. But LSU's offense continues to roll. The defense, I'm not going to say too much about it outside the first quarter. I mean, Georgia State's an offense that's been struggling the past couple of weeks. So we'll breeze through this one. This was pretty much self-explanatory. LSU was a 30-point favorite. This was expected, as the Tigers will finish out their regular season at home against Texas A&M at Saturday, not under the lights. The only light that they'll be seeing is the sunshine. So we'll see if LSU can keep their winning streak alive after losing to Alabama. Still have a chance to win 10 wins. They have to win against Texas A&M and win in the bowl game. So we'll see how the Tigers fare the rest of the season. All right, let's get into how the crew picked in week number 12, and it was pretty good. Wade and I
Auburn.
pretty much have been on the same track, 9-1. Chet went with Southern Miss. It did not work out for him. 8-2 for him. The one game we all got wrong, you probably could guess it. Yep, Auburn against New Mexico State. I don't think that anybody thought that New Mexico State really had a chance or knew that they had a quarterback that was absolutely going to slice and dice them. Maybe we'll see New Mexico State's quarterback in our Dog of the Week on tomorrow's show. Who knows? But
hey, I think he deserves it.
yeah, he definitely deserves it too. So that's our week 12 pick'em results. We'll see if we can continue that momentum heading into week number 13 and also rivalry week. It is the rivalry week presented by Fanatics. Like I mentioned, Black Friday is this Friday. So if you're going to be one of those crazies that go out on shopping, but Fanatics, you can wait on Cyber Monday. Play it safe with all the codes. So if you want to use our Fanatics link to support your sports teams, we're getting to the championship weekend almost. So if your favorite team ended up winning the championship, or better yet, wins the national championship, Fanatics is a place to gear up on your championship gear. All right, let's get into this exciting time. If you've been on the fan of the show, you know what happens to our slides. We do some special slides here. Yep, here we go. Thursday night, after you stuff your face with turkey and whatever you want on Thanksgiving, it's the Egg Bowl. Number 12, Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Now, Ole Miss comes into this game. They're coming off of a win against ULM. Mississippi State coming off of a win at home against Southern Miss. So the cowbells will be ringing on Thursday night. So who do you have taking home the Golden Egg Trophy? Is it going to be Ole Miss or is it going to be Mississippi State?
Oh, this is tough because I like the spoiler role of Mississippi State. It's at Mississippi State. Ole Miss might be looking ahead to that New Year's Day bowl game, but I have to come back to my senses. Mississippi State is a team that lost to Texas A&M. They're a team that lost to Auburn. They're a team that let up 20 points to Southern Miss. I just don't see it happening. I think Ole Miss gets it done. I do think it'll be close, or closer than, well, I don't know. The line's at 13.
The line's 13.5 right now.
I could see it being a 14-point game, but I also could see it being a 7-point game. This game's just always very spirited, as you all know. But yeah, I think talent kind of goes to the wayside in this one, and it's all about heart and just desire to win. And you got the interim coach mixed in there. So this has the recipe for an upset, but I'm going to stick with the favorites here.
Well, this always has a recipe for an upset. I feel like the ranked team in this matchup always loses, but I just can't really get over that 51-10 loss against Texas A&M. I know that they got the win. They put up 40 points, but this is Ole Miss defense that I think is going to be ready to come and play. They want that trophy to come back to Oxford. I think that they get it done, even on the road against Mississippi State. I just don't really trust Mississippi State's defense. You know, I know it's Southern Miss, folks. They were 3-17. Ole Miss, they are no Southern Miss. I think that Jackson Dart, he hasn't been playing to his potential. I think it's going to be more of a Quinshon Judkins game. So I think that this will be close. Wouldn't surprise me if this comes down to the fourth quarter. It feels like the Egg Bowl always does. But I'm going to go with Ole Miss getting some revenge from last year's loss. Chet, he's going to go with the opposite. He's going to go with the maroon and white, getting this one. So he has Hail State taking back the Egg Bowl. So 1 Mississippi State and 2 Ole. Like that, I kind of figured that he was going to go with that. It feels like every time he just goes with the team that's not ranked in this matchup, and that is Mississippi State. So we will see. Should be an exciting environment in Stark Vegas on Thursday night. Let's go on now to the Friday slate. This is the Friday afternoon, the battle line rivalry between Missouri and Arkansas. It is sponsored by Shelter Insurance. Don't know why, but number 10 Missouri at Arkansas. Do you have Missouri getting their 10th win, or do you have Arkansas playing spoiler here?
See, the difference in the two games that we just talked about is Arkansas is already mathematically eliminated from going to a bowl game, whereas I think Mississippi State could get that 6th win. So there's just not as much on the line here. It will be a good send off for KJ Jefferson if he were able to pull off this upset in his final start as a Razorback at home in Fayetteville. But this is a top 10 team. I think they kind of got their scare this past week. I think they'll show up just fine here in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Missouri wins this one pretty convincingly. I think that Arkansas will kind of play in this one. KJ Jefferson getting his last one, Rocket Sanders, and maybe getting his last one. We'll see if he comes back for another year or not. But I think that Brady Cody Schrader, I just don't think that no defense has no answer.
Arkansas has zero answer for Cody Schrader. I'll tell you that.
They have no answers. So I think that Missouri gets into the 40s. This is like a 42-20 type of game. I do think that Arkansas will be able to score. They get it at home, but I think that Missouri, just a too talented football team. So I think that they take back the trophy, the Battle Line trophy. Does Chet completing the sweep? Yes, he will. Mizzou. Sorry. I feel like we haven't really been picking Arkansas too much, but there's always a team that we can't really pick. That's Vanderbilt.
I'll pick them against Auburn, and they embarrassed you.
Yep, that's true. So all rolling with Missouri. Okay, now that Friday and Thursday. Now let's start with the morning slate on Saturday. Yes, this is going to be weird. Usually this game is like always punched into that 6:30 on SEC Network or 6 o'clock on ESPN. Well, ESPN said, hey, let's do something different. Put you at 11 a.m. Texas A&M at number 14 LSU. Last year, LSU got absolutely embarrassed. This was not really much of a game. A&M was a 5-7 team, and they absolutely schooled LSU. So does LSU get their revenge this year?
Yeah, I think last year's tape should definitely be watched by LSU. Just because you're the favored team, the ranked team, doesn't mean that you're going to go out there and win. But I like that this one's in Death Valley. I think the team really has Jaden Daniels back. I think they want to see him win the Heisman Trophy. So I think he shows out, has another, I'll say 4 touchdown performance. I don't think he gets, 8 touchdowns again this week, but I could see him having 4. If he does,
you might as well just call the race over.
Yeah, very true. So, yeah, I see the Tigers getting to maybe 40 points in this one, at least 30. So, yeah, I think LSU gets it done.
I think it's a fair bet to say that both of these teams will score 30. The way that LSU's defense has been playing down the stretch, A&M, their bread and butter has been their defense. Even with their third-string quarterback, I still think that Texas A&M – I feel like Anaya Smith is going to be an absolute problem. I think that he's going to have an absolute game going up against. He'll probably go up against Sage Ryan, and if you've seen Sage Ryan in man coverage, it's not too pretty. So I think this is like a 38-35 type of game. A&M and LSU, it has been close in the past couple of years. So I'm going to go with LSU at home. I think even in the morning, I think that these fans want to see Jaden Daniels in this offense one more time in person. So I think it's going to be a very hostile environment, even at 11 a.m. LSU has not done well at home against at 11 a.m. Last year, they got absolutely blown out by Tennessee. And then 2 years ago, they did beat Florida in the shootout. I think it's another shootout, but give me the Tigers. I think the Bayou Bengals get the victory here, get a little bit of revenge on the Aggies from last year's embarrassment. We know who Chet's going to go with, so we probably don't even have to show that. Chet's always going to go with LSU here on the show. So a clean sweep on LSU. We saw the same thing last year. Hopefully it doesn't come back to bite us. So I'll roll in with the Tigers, pull off the victory against A&M to get that 9th victory on the season. Okay, we will now shift on to Kentucky at number 9, Louisville, the battle for the Governor's Cup. Kentucky, they've been on a team that was very hot at the start of the stretch, and they've come back down to reality. Louisville has been a team that absolutely nobody in the country is talking about. I think that a lot of people have to talk about, especially what happened in Tallahassee. Looking like Jordan Travis is going to be out for the season. Definitely sucks for them. Prayers up to Travis and his family. That definitely blows for them. But Louisville, Florida State versus Louisville, the way that Louisville has been playing, that's going to be an interesting matchup there. Charlotte, Louisville college football playoff. We'll see. But Kentucky at number 9. Louisville, who you got?
Yeah, I think Louisville just continues their momentum. Like you said, Kentucky's just a team that fizzled out about midway through the season. I don't know why it happens every year, but dang, Mark Stoops just has a good job because you never hear his name on the hot seat. He gets paid like a top 15 coach, and they go like 7-5 every year. So I think that Louisville gets this one done. If it was at Kentucky, I would consider the upset, but yeah, I think Louisville could play spoiler. They could win the ACC. I don't think they would get into the playoff with one loss
Yeah, why not?
over Texas if they were to have one loss, or a one-loss Oregon, but they could definitely make it very interesting and really do a team like Georgia a solid, because if Florida State gets beat, I think Georgia could still lose to Alabama and make the playoff.
Yeah, I think that's about the only way that if Georgia loses, they would need Florida State to also. I think that Louisville wins this one. I don't think it's really close. I know this is a rivalry game, and rivalry games always tend to be close, but the way that Louisville's been playing, they just took down a Miami team. I know that Miami, their record doesn't really say how good that team is. Miami's a pretty good football team. So Louisville, this is like really their last test before they get to that Florida State matchup. And if they win that one, I think that they're definitely in a lock for the New Year's Six. They would need absolute chaos to get into the college football playoff. They would need who knows? They would probably need Alabama to lose. They would need Oregon to lose to Oregon State. They would need Washington. I don't know. They would just be too much chaos. But Louisville is looking like either a New Year's Six team or probably a trip back to the
Orange
Super
Bowl.
Bowl. Yeah. So Louisville gets the win here against Kentucky. Chet, is he going to go with the Cards? We're going L's up. Sorry, Kentucky. I feel like every year that we're always picking you, but this year don't really have much faith in you. So we'll see if Big Blue Nation can pull off the upset, but we're all rolling with the Cards. Moving on to the next one here. This is the 2:30 game, the Iron Bowl, number 8 Alabama at Auburn. How close is this one going to be?
Well, we talked really bad about Auburn for the New Mexico State loss and for bulk of the season, but they did give Georgia the best game of the year. And this game does have an act for being close, but I just think Jalen Milroe is just way too physical for Auburn to be able to stop him and hang in this ball game. I'll tell you what, you got to give Jarquez Hunter the ball more than 8 times if you want to have a chance here. I think Alabama wins this one pretty convincingly. I'll take Alabama 34-10.
Yeah, I don't think this one's going to be close. The only way that you're going to beat Alabama is to have a guy that can throw the ball down the field, and Peyton Thorne just hasn't been that this season.
I don't think he's
Alabama wins this one. I'll say 42-10. I don't think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be over by the half, and Alabama will be walking to Atlanta. This will be an absolute blowout. I hate to say it. I mean, the Iron Bowl, definitely one of the best rivalry games in the SEC, but not this year, Auburn, especially after that. Oh boy, it's not even. Yeah, this is not even going to be close. So Chet's going to go. Is he going to go for an upset? No. See, that it's not going to be close when Chet doesn't pick Alabama, because I feel like every year he picks Auburn in the Iron Bowl, but he's rolling with the tide. So we're all picking Alabama. We think that we're all consistent. It's not going to be pretty much close. So we have the Battle of Tennessee here. Vanderbilt at number 25, Tennessee. This hasn't really been much of a rivalry, as the Vols have dominated this series as of late. Do you see that continuing against Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not very high on either one of these teams. Tennessee, they are who they are. I mean, they're good enough to win the games they should. This is one they should win, but they really have looked bad against all the ranked teams they've played this year. But luckily for them, Vanderbilt's nowhere close to being ranked. They're near the bottom of the country and the conference. So I see them having no issues here. But for Tennessee, just kind of a disappointing season.
Yeah, disappointing for sure. But I do think that they finish out the regular season at home on a good note here. I think that they get a victory here against Vanderbilt. Will it be close? Probably not. I just don't think that Vanderbilt will be able to stop Joe Millen and Jalen Wright. He's probably going to have a big game for you. That's why you picked him in an SEC fantasy. And Chet, any surprises here? No, he's not. He's going to go with Tennessee. So really there hasn't been too much disagreement, which is pretty surprising. I feel like in rivalry week, there's always some chaos, but no chaos here in this matchup against
It might be
Tennessee.
coming.
Might be coming. We'll see. So we'll move on now to the Sunshine Showdown, number 5, Florida State at Florida. And this is actually now the battle of probably the backup quarterback. Jordan Travis is likely out for the season. And then Florida, Graham Mertz is out for the season. So we'll see how these new look offense. It's not really new look offense. It's just a quarterback. Florida State, I mean, they have one of the best wide receivers too, Keon Coleman. They do have dudes around him, so this is not. It is going to be a drop off, but it's not going to be the drop off that you think. And then the defense for Florida State is going to be tricky, but this is a tricky matchup. You know, going to the Swamp. This is, I believe, this is a night game, so this is definitely going to be a hostile environment to go into. So, do you have the Gators pulling off the upset, or Florida State staying on track of the playoff?
Well, yeah, this is another one that has the makings for an upset because Florida does have a chance at gaining bowl eligibility. Florida State just had an emotional loss of their quarterback. I can see it happening, but what Florida showed me at the end of last week's game, I mean, geez, this team is just not disciplined. They're not meant to win a big game like this. They had the win. They had bowl eligibility against Missouri. They had a top 10 upset, but they weren't able to get it done. I think that this team will definitely get up for this game. But given that they're playing with their own backup, I just don't see it happening. I'm going to go with Florida State, although I'm really high on Louisville right now, and I think they could beat Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, if that game was played, I would probably be picking Louisville. We'll see how Louisville looks against Kentucky on Saturday, but I'm also going to go Florida State. With Jordan Travis or not, I think that they do still have the weapons. I just think that the defense, that's where this game is going to be won and lost. Florida hasn't really shown me a defense. Florida State has. So, like you mentioned, they absolutely blew that one. You got to blame all the coaching on that. I mean, it all goes back. They were not disciplined at the end of the few minutes against Missouri. So I think that when it matters, I think that Florida State, Mike Norvell, finishes off a regular season undefeated. Definitely a good season for Florida State. But, man, you got to feel for them without Jordan Travis. You know, how high is that ceiling? You know, are they still a national championship team? You know, we saw back in 2014, you know, Cardale Jones was able to lead them to the national championship. So Florida State is pretty much going to have the same to happen to them. Jet, is he going to go for an upset? Yes, he will.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
chomping with the Gators. He got, yeah, there it is, the Gator chomp. He's going to roll with, honestly, I could see it, but this would have to be an absolute battle for Florida to win this one, especially with Graham Mertz not being there. I feel like this would definitely be a game to watch if Graham Mertz was there, but we'll see how the backup rolls. But he is rolling with the Gators to get that 6th win on the year. Moving on to the clean old-fashioned 8 rivalry. Hasn't been much of a rivalry. Has been an absolute blowout because Georgia's just been good and Georgia Tech hasn't. But Georgia Tech has been a very pesky team in the ACC, and they face off against number 1 Georgia. So who do you have winning this in-state rivalry game in Georgia?
Well, Georgia Tech does have a knack for winning some even week games. This is a Week 12 game. They were able to upset some other opponents on their schedule, but I just don't see it happening. I think Georgia's the clear-on national championship favorite. I know that we have several undefeated conference champions or future conference champions out there, but I just don't see any of them matching what Georgia's got to bring. And you got that guy right there on your screen, Brock Bowers, back in the fold. Everybody thought that he would be returning in the playoff, but now you get some chemistry with him the last 3 weeks of the regular season. I think this team's just absolutely rolling, and it's very hard to win 3 championships in a row, but they have a very good chance to do so.
Very good chance indeed, and I think that they're going to win this one pretty convincingly too. You know, Georgia Tech, they've definitely been a team to watch in the ACC. You know, they're going to go bowling. They'll get into a good bowl. They'll probably finish off the season 6-6. But I am going to go with Georgia. Probably just going to be another game where Georgia Tech probably keeps it close for a quarter, then Georgia just runs their train right over you and keeps on rolling. So give me the dogs. Chet is also going to go with the dogs so I'll roll with Georgia. That's been pretty consistent. There hasn't been too much picking against Georgia on this show this whole entire season. Last but not least, certainly not least, it's the Palmetto Bowl, Clemson at South Carolina. Wade has definitely known about this rivalry ever since that he grew up watching this one. So Clemson at South Carolina. We saw South Carolina spoil Clemson season. This was, now South Carolina, they sit at 5 wins. Do you see the Gamecocks going bowling?
Hey, I think this one has all the makings for the upset, right? It's at night. You saw South Carolina going ruckus against Kentucky. Can you imagine what it's going to be like for the in-state rival here against Clemson? Clemson's a team, I'll give Dabo Swinney credit. They've definitely gotten on the right track. This team looks like their usual dominant self as of late, but they just had too many struggles early in the year, so they're not going to be going to their conference championship game. There's nothing to look ahead for. There's no excuses. It all comes down to the Palmetto State rivalry. And if South Carolina wins this game, they'll get some extra bowl practices, much needed for them. I got to do it. I got to go with USC, 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 USC.
All right.
Go Cox. I'm going to take South Carolina. Got the rag from the Gamecock Bowl between South Carolina and Jacksonville State from a couple weeks ago. So going with South Carolina in this one. I'm going to say it's going to be kind of like the Kentucky game, a little bit of a slugfest. I'm going to take them 27-24.
Well, we saw in last year's game, special teams was the difference. We'll see if it comes again. But yeah, like you mentioned, Clemson, after that slow start to the season, they definitely been riding high. South Carolina, with one more win, they get to bowling. And I think that it vaults them over. Give me the Gamecocks too. I was under the lights too. If this wasn't Death Valley, this would definitely be a Clemson win. But South Carolina gets this one. I'll say 27-24. Spencer Rattler balls out against Clemson's defense and sends Dabo Swinney and the boys crying once again for back-to-back years. And South Carolina will now start a new winning streak against their in-state rivals. So give me the Gamecocks, and we'll see them bowling. Chad, is he going to do the same? No, he's not. Boo this fan right now. How dare we see a paw print on an SEC talk show? How dare you pick? Well, I know that we picked against Louisville. The ACC has dominated the SEC, but South Carolina will definitely be the team to break that streak. So that's going to be it for our picks in rivalry week. Definitely see who's on top of the leaderboard, and we'll see if South Carolina can pull off that victory to get to bowl eligibility. So now let's move on to hot topics. This is definitely going to be one of the last ones. Like I mentioned, Florida Gators quarterback Graham Mertz suffers a significant collarbone injury, so he's more than likely going to be out for the season, especially definitely. I mean, Florida doesn't get a victory, then they won't go to a bowl game, and that will pretty much be the season for Florida. Next one we already talked about, pretty much Jane Daniels. He tied Joe Burrow's record with 8 touchdowns. So definitely congratulations for Daniels. We'll see if that's going to be enough to lift the Heisman Trophy and become the third all-time to lift the Heisman Trophy for the LSU. And another record that was, I guess, kind of broken. Well, it probably will be broken. Georgia ties the win streak record for the SEC team. I'm sure who you can guess the other team that has that record.
Probably Alabama.
It is Alabama. I mean, that's probably like the easiest Jeopardy answer you could probably do. All right, let's get some predicting. Next week, we will do our official college football playoff predictions. I figured we would wait until championship week, so that will be happening next week. But let's predict the top 6 for Tuesday's college football ranking show. So how do you think that the top 6 will be on Tuesday?
Yeah, I think number 1 will be Georgia. They did nothing to hurt their cause over the weekend. Got a big win over a ranked team in Tennessee. So number 1, Georgia. Number 2, I'm going to go with Ohio State. The committee seems to be pretty high on them. The Buckeyes looked pretty good this weekend as well. Number 3, for now, I'll give it to Washington for now. They have a ranked win over Oregon. It's the best win in the outside of the SEC. So I'll give it to Washington. Number 4, I feel like they're still going to go with Florida State, but I could see them discounting Florida State after kind of struggling and then Jordan Travis being hurt. Number 5, I'll give it to Michigan. And then number 6, I'll go with Oregon.
I think it's pretty similar. I mean, I could see the same 6 teams. I'll go number one, Georgia. Georgia is definitely just putting themselves at the top, and it's not even close. So Ohio State, they look pretty good against Minnesota. They do have a big matchup against Michigan. I do agree with you. I think that Washington has one of the best resumes in the country. Even with the Oregon win, they got a top 25 victory against Oregon State. They got a top 25 victory against Arizona. Arizona is starting to play
Yeah,
very
that
good
win's looking
football.
really good for both of those teams.
Jetfish is definitely turning that program around. I think that Michigan stays at 4. I think that they bumped down Florida State. Florida State's resume, was good at the start of the season. LSU, it's probably their best win of the season. Outside of that, Clemson has fallen off, and outside of that, they really don't have that win that a Washington has. So I think that with that alone, knocks them down at number 5, and then Oregon is number 6. But Oregon is a team that isn't playing like a number 6. If they didn't have that loss against Washington, they would probably be my number 2 team the way that they have been playing. Oregon has been playing with their absolute hair on fire, and I think that we're probably on a collision course with Oregon and Washington in a rematch of the Pac-12 championship. So we'll see how the rankings shape out on Tuesday. Like I mentioned, we'll do our predictions, final prediction before the selection show happens. So that's going to be it for SEC Talk week number 13. So we appreciate everybody tuning in, leaving it in the comments on Facebook and on YouTube. So next week, we'll be recapping week 13, also known as Rivalry Week. And we'll also look forward to Championship Week. I know that we're an SEC show, but we're not just going to spend an hour talking about a game. So we'll talk about all of the championship games that'll be happening throughout the college football landscape, as we always do. So the shows are dwindling down on the football season, and then we'll get into our off-season shows as we always do. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time off with friends and family. And we will see you back here next Sunday here on SEC Talk. So long for now.